June 18, 2024, Atlanta, Georgia. A crowd gathered to celebrate new life, but within minutes, people were running for help. Someone at that baby shower called 911. Their voice shaking and words all over the place. But one thing was clear. Something inside that house went terribly wrong. Police rushed inside expecting a medical emergency tied to pregnancy, but found a scene that pointed to something far more disturbing. No sign of a break-in, nothing stolen, not even a clue left behind by the person who did the horrific act before officers arrived. Every guest claimed they saw the same thing: smiles, laughter, a party filled with joy. Then suddenly, blood. How does a celebration turn into a crime that leaves even detectives speechless? And if everyone was there to support a growing family, how could no one really have known what was happening behind those doors? The crime scene police walked into on June 18, 2024, revolves around certain people. And to understand what happened, detectives knew they needed to look backward. Before the flashing lights, before the panic, before the screams. They needed to know not just the victim or the suspect, but who they were as human beings, and the choices, fears, and dreams that brought them to this moment. One of those people was 53-year-old Karen Whitfield. But who exactly was Karen before Atlanta detectives would write her name on a homicide report? Karen was born on February 6, 1971, in an Atlanta hospital under the worst start a newborn can have. Her mother, Lisa, never made it out of the delivery room. From that moment, Karen's entire world became just one person: her father, Richard Whitfield. He was her comfort, her cheerleader, the warm voice who tucked her in at night and reminded her that she was loved, even if life had taken something from them both. Neighbors remembered seeing them together constantly, a father and daughter holding on to each other like they knew the world could change in a second. That second came when Karen was 12. A sudden heart attack took her father while he was on his shift at the warehouse. The school counselor called her out of class saying, "There's been an emergency." Karen would later tell a friend that the moment she heard the words, "Your father is gone," it felt like the ground disappeared beneath her. With no parents left, she was sent to live with her father's sister, Aunt Diana, a woman who cared enough to provide food and a bed, but not the security of unconditional love. Karen was grateful, yes, but she often sat alone in her new room thinking, if love is real, why does it keep leaving me? School became her way to feel in control when life wasn't. She learned that the only thing that couldn't be taken from her was achievement. Teachers described her as focused, quiet, and surprisingly mature for someone who had lost so much so young. Her guidance counselor once told her, "Some kids coast, but you fight. That's going to take you somewhere." Karen clung to those words like a lifeline. Every A grade, every honor roll mention was her way of proving she mattered, even if she still cried quietly at night when no one heard. Her determination earned her admission to Georgia State University. She chose economics because she knew money could build security, something she had lived too long without. Still, college wasn't glamorous for her. She juggled 2 part-time jobs, one at a bookstore and another waiting tables, to afford rent and tuition. On weekends, she caught up on sleep instead of going to parties. She'd glance at other students talking about weekend trips and family visits, quietly wishing she had someone waiting for her back home too. But she kept going, telling herself failure was not an option. Graduation was supposed to be the moment everything clicked. She had the degree. She had the drive. But she quickly discovered the adult world had its own barriers. Interview after interview ended the same way. "You don't have enough experience." It was the kind of rejection that didn't just sting. It insulted every sacrifice she made to get that diploma. For months, she applied everywhere she could, feeling the pressure of bills she barely managed to pay. One evening, exhausted from disappointment, she vented to her longtime friend Nicole over cheap takeout. Nicole looked at her and said, "Karen, you know how to talk to people. Try real estate. You'd be great at it." That simple suggestion changed her life. Karen enrolled in real estate courses and earned her license, believing she'd finally found the key to the future she'd imagined. But the first year nearly broke her. Standing at open houses where no one showed up, getting undercut by veteran agents who saw her as competition not worth acknowledging, watching deals collapse at the last minute. A young couple once told her, "We like you, but we need someone more experienced," and she politely smiled while feeling her heart sink. At night she prayed, "Dad, if I'm making a mistake, send me a sign." The sign never came, but neither did defeat. She refused to retreat back into a life where she depended on others. Slowly, one satisfied client became 2, then 6, then a network. Her reputation grew, hardworking, sharp, and dependable. She learned how to negotiate like someone who had been negotiating survival her entire life. By her mid-40s, Karen was closing million-dollar listings. Her wardrobe shifted to tailored blazers and confidence. Her condo had a skyline view that reminded her of everything she conquered. She had gone from a scared orphan to a woman people respected. But respect wasn't love. And when the front door closed each night, the silence in her condo reminded her that success didn't fill the empty side of her bed. Dating was another battlefield where hope kept losing. Some men saw her as a status symbol, someone to show off but not cherish. Others were only there for physical attraction or convenience. One man abruptly ghosted after she asked where the relationship was heading. Another cheated and told her, "You're too focused on your career," as if ambition was a flaw. She once confided in Nicole, voice shaking, "People love what I can offer, not who I am." As she entered her 50s, Karen feared something she rarely admitted out loud. The time she had left to build a family might already be gone. She wanted to be chosen, not tolerated, not used. Chosen. She watched friends plan weddings, host baby showers, celebrate anniversaries. She congratulated them with a smile that didn't show the ache inside. On her 52nd birthday, she stared at her reflection and whispered, "I have everything. So why does it still feel like I have nothing?" What Karen didn't know then was that her life was about to take a turn she once thought she no longer deserved. Love would finally come knocking. Someone new was about to enter her story, someone who made her believe that her wait was finally over. But as investigators would later discover, the very hope she had longed for would lead her down a path more dangerous than she ever imagined. Now we shift our focus from Karen to another figure whose role left behind a mystery police are yet to solve. His name, Tyrese Walker. At just 27 years old, he was nearly half Karen's age, but he carried ambitions that stretched farther than his circumstances ever allowed. Born in 1997 and raised in the southwest side of Atlanta, he grew up learning early that life wasn't going to hand him anything. Family members described his childhood as a revolving door of temporary homes, relatives who tried their best, and a mother who fought to keep food on the table while working double shifts. Tyrese learned young that if he wanted something, he had to take control of it himself. His mother, Brenda Walker, often told him, "I need you to be better than what the world expects from you." But expectations were hard to meet when bills kept stacking up and the fridge didn't always have enough for the week. Sports became his outlet. He shined in basketball during high school, but a knee injury during his senior year ended any chance of a college scholarship. After graduation, he bounced through part-time jobs at gyms and retail stores, searching for a path that would take him out of struggle. He eventually found work as a personal trainer, something that didn't need a degree, just confidence, charm, and the ability to make people believe in him. And charm was one thing Tyrese had without question. Clients liked him immediately. He was the kind of trainer who remembered people's birthdays and complimented progress others wouldn't notice. But despite his personality and determination, the income wasn't enough to match the lifestyle he admired all around him. He trained wealthy clients who drove luxury cars, wore designer watches, and vacationed in places he had only ever seen on TV. He once joked to a coworker, "I'm tired of watching people live the life I should be living." The coworker laughed, but Tyrese's eyes didn't match the joke. He meant every word. His dreams were fueled by ambition, but his bank account didn't agree. Some months he barely paid rent. Other months he had to choose between groceries or the light bill. He wanted more than survival. He wanted significance. And significance to him meant creating something that would outlive him. The one thing he talked about more than money was having a family. He would say, "I want a son who looks up to me and says, 'My dad made something of himself.'" That desire wasn't just emotional. It was his way of reclaiming what his unstable childhood took from him. Being a father was his version of redemption. But there were signs that Tyrese's need for control sometimes crossed a line. Police records later uncovered 2 domestic disturbance calls tied to past relationships. Both incidents involving heated arguments where neighbors called 911. No arrests were made, but the reports noted aggressive tone and controlling behavior. One ex-girlfriend told detectives during questioning, "Tyrese could be sweet one minute and then snap when he felt disrespected. He'd say things like, 'Don't embarrass me,' or 'If you truly care about me, you'll listen.'" She recalled a moment when she tried to end the relationship, and he responded, "I can't go backwards. You're either with me or you're in the way." She eventually left, telling police she feared how angry he could become. Socially, he presented himself as confident and composed. He dressed well even if it meant maxing out his credit card. He spoke like someone who already had success, even while chasing overdue payments. People either admired him or felt uneasy without always knowing why. Beneath the charisma lived a fear he worked hard to hide, the fear of being ordinary. He craved validation, attention, and proof that he was worth more than his upbringing suggested. A friend from his gym once told investigators, Tyrese didn't want love. He wanted loyalty. He wanted someone who'd choose him over everything else. And when he found that in someone older, wealthier, and deeply longing for companionship, he embraced it. Behind closed doors, Tyrese's anxieties around status and respect only intensified. He would scroll through social media, seeing men his age posting pictures with their children and new homes, and he felt like time was slipping away. During a recorded therapy session prior to meeting Karen, something police later recovered, he admitted, "I don't want to be forgotten. I want someone who needs me." The therapist responded, "Why is being needed more important to you than being loved?" He paused, then answered, "Because being needed means you can't be replaced." It was a sentence that would take on a chilling meaning later. By 2023, Tyrese was stuck between two identities, the man he wanted to be and the reality he woke up to every morning. He envied his high-end clients who were praised for success he believed he deserved. He once told a gym member after they mentioned their upcoming vacation, "One day, I won't be asking people how their trip was. I'll be telling them about mine." He smiled, but again, there was no humor behind it. He was constantly reminding himself that he was meant for more, even if the universe didn't seem to agree. And that hurt, combined with the pressure to finally have the life he believed he deserved, created a dangerous mix. Police now believe understanding who Tyrese was is crucial to understanding everything that followed. Because when a man builds his entire identity around finally winning at life, what happens if he thinks someone is taking that win away from him? It was in the year 2023, March 5th, that Karen Whitfield made a decision she hoped would change her life, even if just a little. She wanted to take better care of her health after noticing work stress and age catching up with her. She talked to her friend Nicole about wanting to work out, but not wanting to look out of place in a gym full of younger people. Nicole reassured her and said, "There's someone at my fitness center who's great at helping women feel comfortable. Trust me, you'll like him." That someone was 27-year-old personal trainer Tyrese Walker. Karen had no idea that call would alter the course of everything that would follow. Their first meeting was simple and businesslike. Karen arrived early wearing modest workout gear and a nervous smile, unsure if she belonged there. Tyrese walked over with an easy confidence, greeting her with a handshake and the line, "Don't worry, we start wherever you are, no pressure." He didn't treat her like she was older or out of shape. He treated her like someone who deserved to be there. She appreciated that more than she admitted. During that session, he focused on posture, breathing, and guiding her movements, complimenting her when she pushed through a challenge. As the sessions continued, Karen showed the same determination that made her successful in real estate. If Tyrese asked for 10 reps, she pushed for 12. He noticed and said one day, "You don't quit, do you?" Karen laughed and replied, "Quitting is something I learned to leave behind a long time ago." Conversations like that weren't planned. They just started slipping in between the workout routines, filling the silent spaces with small pieces of who they each were. She didn't talk openly about her childhood or heartbreak, but she allowed glimpses of her vulnerability to surface. Tyrese seemed drawn to it. Karen liked feeling seen. For years, men approached her with assumptions already made, focusing more on her appearance or accomplishments than her heart and mind. But Tyrese asked her real questions like, "What do you do when you're not working?" and "What kind of future do you want?" When she hesitated to answer, he didn't push. He simply listened when she was ready. After one session, he told her, "You have more strength than most people realize." It wasn't flirtation, it was acknowledgement. And acknowledgement was something she craved more than she ever allowed people to know. Their bond grew not from attraction at first, but from familiarity and comfort. Tyrese started scheduling her as his last session of the day so they could talk without a rush. Karen began looking forward to those hours more than she looked forward to closing deals. One evening after a particularly long workout, he said, "You're doing all this for someone special?" She smiled awkwardly and said, "Just me." He shook his head and answered, "Someone needs to appreciate you the way you deserve." Comments like that, gentle, personal, began lowering the walls she built around her heart. Still, there were doubts. Karen was aware of how things might appear, a successful 50-something woman spending more and more time with a man in his late 20s. When Nicole teased her, "Girl, he is cute and he clearly likes you," Karen brushed it off at first. She reminded her friend, "He's young enough to be my son." But deep down, she wondered if maybe age didn't have to be a barrier if the connection was real. What scared her wasn't how others might react. It was how much she was beginning to care. The shift from professional to personal began subtly. Tyrese started offering to walk her to her car, especially when the sky darkened early during winter months. They exchanged numbers after he told her, "Text me if you need tips or motivation between sessions." Those texts turned into daily check-ins about work, life, and dreams. When Karen asked him what he wanted most in the future, he answered without hesitation, "A family of my own. Someone who chooses me every day." That line echoed in her mind long after the conversation ended. Karen felt a happiness she hadn't known in years. She told Nicole one night over dinner, "He makes me feel like I matter again." For a woman who spent most of her adult life believing love would always be the thing she never truly had, that feeling was intoxicating. Tyrese didn't seem bothered by the age difference either. When she tried to bring it up once, he replied, "Age doesn't build loyalty. People do." She believed him because she wanted to believe him. He made her feel wanted, not for her success, not for her looks, but for her presence. But not everyone in Karen's circle approved. Some whispered behind her back, making comments like, "She could be his mom," or "He's using her, just wait." A cousin joked during a family gathering, "Is he going to prom or going out with you?" Even Aunt Diana, who had always been practical, warned, "Be careful with men who want quick access to a life they didn't build." These doubts lingered in Karen's mind, but she countered them with the simple truth she clung to. Tyrese chose her when no one else had. Tyrese's admiration for loyalty became a theme in their early relationship. He told her once, during a late-night phone call, "I've had people walk away when I needed them, but I won't be that guy. I stay." Karen cherished those words because they hit the deepest wound she carried, the fear of abandonment. For once, she felt like someone wasn't going anywhere, and that belief became her comfort. By the end of 2023, their relationship was no longer a secret. Karen introduced him as someone important in her life, even if she didn't label it at first. They went out to dinner, took weekend walks, celebrated milestones quietly. She believed she had finally found a love that was different, solid, faithful, and built on mutual admiration. She allowed herself to hope again. She dared to believe that the heartbreaks, the losses, the lonely nights, had all led her to this moment. But while Karen was falling in love with the man she thought would be her future, she didn't know that his future dreams came with expectations she couldn't meet. She couldn't yet see the pressure forming beneath the surface, pressure that would soon expose a truth capable of destroying everything she thought she finally had. By all means, the relationship between Karen and Tyrese looked like heaven finally sending her someone to love. But behind her confident smile and polished life, Karen was living with a secret that weighed heavier than anyone could imagine. A secret she told no one, not Nicole, not her co-workers, not Aunt Dora who prayed for her every night, and especially not the man she hoped would stay. It was a part of her past she tried to bury so deep that she believed time would eventually erase the pain. But time didn't erase it. It only hid it until the moment it mattered most. That secret began on April 12, 2022, when Karen arrived at a hospital during a terrifying health collapse. One moment she was preparing dinner, and the next she was doubled over on her kitchen floor, unable to stand, blood soaking through her clothes. The ambulance rushed her through the emergency entrance, and within minutes doctors discovered multiple uterine tumors, fibroids causing rapid blood loss. "Ms. Whitfield, we need to take you to surgery now," the OB/GYN said firmly. "If we don't act fast, you could go into shock." Karen nodded, gripping the rails of the stretcher, terrified but trying to stay composed like she always did. The procedure began late that night. A total hysterectomy became the only option to save her life. When she woke up the next morning in recovery, a nurse leaned down gently and said, "Everything went well. You're stable now." Stable, while her future as a mother had been taken away without warning. Hours later, the surgeon sat beside her bed, speaking softly but clearly. "Karen, you won't be able to carry children anymore." Her throat closed. All she could whisper was, "There's no chance? Not ever?" The doctor placed a hand on her arm and shook his head. "I'm so sorry." Recovery wasn't just physical. It was emotional in a way she had never faced. Alone in a hospital room, she stared at her hands, feeling like her body had betrayed the one dream she kept closest to her heart. She thought of her mother she never met. She thought of her father who once told her she'd be a wonderful parent someday. And she thought about how many times she had told herself, "One day, I won't come home to silence." Now that day would never come the way she imagined. The nurse documented in her chart, patient tearful during post-op conversation, support encouraged. But there was no real support waiting for her beyond the discharge papers. When Aunt Dora asked about her hospital visit, Karen forced a smile and said it was just a minor surgery, avoiding every detail that mattered. Aunt Dora, older and dealing with her own health issues, didn't push further. Nicole tried too, asking, "Are you sure everything's okay?" Karen answered, "I'm fine, just tired." She got good at saying those two sentences. Fine, tired. They protected her from pity and the fear that someone might treat her differently if they knew what she could no longer give. Even strangers became reminders of what she had lost. In grocery stores, she caught herself staring at young mothers placing babies into shopping carts. In quiet moments at home, she would scroll past photos of baby showers and first birthdays, clicking like while holding back tears. She once admitted to herself out loud, "I wasn't ready to lose this too." It wasn't just that she couldn't have a baby. It was the brutal feeling that life had taken away her chance at the family she had dreamed of since she was the lonely girl in Aunt Diana's house. In October 2022, during a follow-up appointment, her doctor encouraged her to consider speaking to a support therapist. "This kind of loss can feel invisible to others," the therapist told her in their first virtual session. "But it's real. It's grief." Karen replied quietly, "I don't want to be seen as broken." The therapist responded, "You're not broken. You experienced trauma." But Karen didn't believe that. She left the call feeling exposed and vowed not to open that wound again. She tried to move forward the only way she knew, by working harder, smiling brighter, and avoiding conversations about children entirely. When colleagues announced pregnancies at the office, she congratulated them warmly, then slipped into the restroom to wipe tears no one else saw. When family friends asked, "Any kids yet, dear?" she forced a laugh and said, "Not in my plans," while her chest ached from the lie. It was easier to pretend she didn't want motherhood than to admit she lost it without having the chance to fight for it. So when Tyrese entered her life months later, admiring, affectionate, and full of dreams about the future, Karen did what survivors do. She protected herself from further heartbreak. She listened when he talked about family, and she smiled when he spoke about having a child who would look up to him. But inside, panic grew like a quiet storm she refused to acknowledge. She told herself, maybe it won't come up again. Maybe he'll change. Maybe love will rewrite the story. Hope became a mask, not a solution. That fear didn't make her dishonest. It made her human. She had already learned that the truth had the power to take everything she loved. In her mind, revealing the hysterectomy wasn't just telling the truth. It was handing someone a reason to walk away. And she told herself she could risk a lot. But not that. But choosing not to tell the truth would become the most dangerous decision of her life. The next thing Karen chose to do is something no one would have ever guessed she was capable of. Can you make a guess? Pause this video now and tell us in the comments what you think she did. For a woman who built a life on truth, professionalism, and integrity, the decision she was about to make would shock anyone who believed they truly knew her. Karen loved Tyrese, and she feared that telling him she couldn't have children would end everything before they ever had a real chance. In her mind, honesty felt risky, and deception seemed like the only way to protect what she finally had. It began slowly. One evening, Karen sat alone on her couch, scrolling through her phone, researching options she never imagined she would even consider. She found online support forums where other women discussed infertility and the emotional weight they carried. But one thread caught her eye, a discussion about realistic silicone pregnancy bellies used in acting and entertainment. A woman on the forum wrote, "It helped me feel whole again." And that sentence hit Karen harder than anything the doctors had said. She whispered to herself, "If I can look pregnant, I can hold on to love." The next week, she placed an order for a high-quality silicone baby bump, one specifically designed to mimic the natural shape of a pregnant belly at different stages. It wasn't cheap, but price no longer mattered when the fear of losing Tyrese felt more costly than anything she could ever spend. As she finalized the order, she paused and stared at the screen with shaky hands. She asked herself, is this really the right thing? But instead of backing down, she clicked Complete Purchase and told herself, I'll fix everything later. I just need time. When the package arrived, the reality of what she had done hit her like a wave. She locked her bedroom door, took a deep breath, and strapped on the prosthetic belly. The weight of it felt strange at first, foreign, yet oddly comforting. Looking in the mirror, she placed a hand on her stomach and let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. For the first time since her surgery, she imagined a life where she was enough. She imagined Tyrese smiling, calling her Mom. She convinced herself this lie was built on love, not manipulation. But the belly was only the beginning. She visited a small clinic to purchase fake positive pregnancy tests. She rehearsed excuses in case Tyrese suddenly asked to see one. She downloaded ultrasound templates online and used a free editing tool to add a name and date that matched what a real early scan would show. She understood how to present paperwork. After all, she negotiated legal documents for a living. Each forged detail made the lie stronger, more believable, more permanent. Yet each one also pushed her deeper into something she could not reverse. When it came to doctor visits, Karen had to get creative. She scheduled real appointments under the guise of women's health follow-ups, never using Tyrese's name anywhere in her records. She carefully planned days when he would be too busy with clients to attend. For the appointment he insisted on going to, she told him it was a routine check that didn't allow guests inside due to space restrictions. "I'll be quick," she assured him, with a soft kiss on his cheek. Tyrese replied, "As long as you and the baby are okay, that's all that matters." Karen smiled, nodding, while her pulse hammered in her ears. The lie didn't stop with props and schedules. Karen began adjusting her daily behaviors to match what people expected from pregnant women. She avoided alcohol, skipped hot baths, and started saying things like, "The baby doesn't like certain smells," when she wanted to leave a room. She added pillows between her and Tyrese at night, claiming she needed support for her back. Intimacy became less frequent but plausible, explained away with doctor warnings about taking it easy during early pregnancy. She managed every detail, her wardrobe, her posture, her excuses, to keep her story flawless. At first, Tyrese seemed thrilled. He became softer, more attentive, and proudly protective. He placed a hand on her belly often, whispering, "I'm going to take care of you and our little one." When he told his mother over the phone, Karen overheard him say, "I can't believe my dream is coming true." There was so much joy in his voice that Karen's heart both swelled and broke at the same time. She never wanted to hurt Tyrese. She wanted to give him what life had always withheld from her, the chance to feel chosen. But that desire came with pressure she couldn't escape. Every morning she woke up terrified that the wrong move would expose her secret. Every night she rehearsed her lies like lines in a script she didn't want to be starring in. She told herself she was buying time. Time to find another path, time for a miracle she knew science couldn't deliver. And when doubt surfaced, she silenced it with a simple thought. If it keeps him from leaving, then it's worth it. As weeks passed, Karen wore her artificial pregnancy like armor, but the weight of the lie grew heavier than the belly itself. She no longer knew where truth ended and the performance began. The mask she created became her identity. Every word, every smile, every kick she pretended to feel was part of the world she built to protect her heart. But lies, even the ones meant to save love, eventually demand a price. Karen didn't see the danger forming ahead. She couldn't imagine how quickly everything would crumble once the truth slipped. She never expected the man who once promised, "I'm not going anywhere," would become the man police across multiple states would later be searching for. She thought she was preserving love. Instead, she was unknowingly lighting the fuse that would lead to her own destruction. With months past, Karen realized there was something else missing in her almost perfect pregnancy plan. And that was a baby shower. In a country like America, baby showers are quite a big deal. They are celebrations filled with balloons, food, laughter, and gifts for the newest member of the family. And for Karen, hosting one wasn't just tradition. It was proof to the world that she was living the life she always wanted. It was a chance to show everyone that this time, she wasn't the woman left behind. She was the woman starting a family. June 18th, 2024, was the date she chose. A warm Tuesday evening in Atlanta, carefully planned to fit Tyrese's schedule and allow enough time before what everyone believed would be the birth of baby Walker. Karen paid attention to every detail. She booked a private event hall decorated in soft creams and gold, rented upscale dining furniture, and ordered a custom backdrop with large, shimmering letters spelling out Baby Walker. The caterers prepared a 3-course meal, and the dessert table was stacked with cupcakes topped with pink and blue sparkles. To the guests, it felt like a celebration of joy. But to Karen, it was a celebration built on fear that the truth would cost her everything. Family and friends began arriving one by one, greeting Karen with hugs and excitement. Nicole squeezed her shoulders and whispered, "You look so happy. I'm proud of you." Aunt Dora, slower on her feet but glowing with pride, placed a hand on Karen's cheek and said, "Your daddy would have loved this day." Karen held those words close to her heart, forcing back the sting of tears. People mingled, taking photos and writing messages on welcome baby cards. Karen moved from group to group, thanking guests, feeling for a moment like her dream was finally real. In her mind, she repeated the same desperate hope. As long as he believes this, I won't lose him. Tyrese, meanwhile, welcomed guests and shook hands, smiling wide enough to look proud but not wide enough to mask the confusion growing in his mind. Something about the timeline had been bothering him lately. He had asked Karen a few days earlier, "Babe, are we in the 2nd or 3rd trimester now?" Karen answered quickly, "3rd," then changed it to end of 2nd moments later. He brushed it off at the time, but the moment stuck with him like a pop-up that wouldn't close. One of the guests later told detectives, "He looked proud, but at times his face shifted like he was thinking too hard about something." As dinner was served, Tyrese sat down beside Karen and placed a gentle hand on her belly. "You okay? You've been walking around all night," he said quietly. Karen nodded, smiling as if everything was easy. "I'm perfect," she replied. But perfection was an act she was struggling to maintain. Her hands trembled slightly under the table as she held her napkin. She feared sweat would loosen the adhesive on the silicone belly, so she kept dabbing her forehead with caution. The deeper the lie, the harder it became to breathe normally. Karen's phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. "You really did it, girl. I'm so happy for you." Karen replied with a heart emoji, pretending it didn't cut right through her. She loved the happiness people felt for her. She just wished she didn't have to betray their trust to receive it. In moments when doubt crept in, she repeated the same thought. "It's just until I figure something out." But there was nothing left to figure out. There was only the lie. The event reached its peak when the DJ asked everyone for a toast. Karen stood with her glass, thanking the people who supported her through life, her voice slightly shaking from emotion and fear. She ended with, "This baby is already so loved." Guests clapped and cheered, fully invested in the story she had created. Tyrese smiled at her, but the look in his eyes lingered longer than before. He leaned in and whispered, "What hospital will we be delivering at again?" Karen swallowed hard and answered, "We're still deciding." The uncertainty in her voice made his eyebrow twitch, but he said nothing. Shortly after, Karen stepped away from the crowd, heading toward the restroom to readjust the belly and calm her nerves. The restroom lights felt too bright, exposing the artificial bump in the mirror. She closed the door and whispered to herself, "Just one more night. You can survive one more night." She carefully lifted the dress, checking the straps and adhesive. She didn't know that this private moment was about to collide with the one person she needed to believe her the most. Back in the hall, Tyrese noticed she'd been gone a little too long. He walked quietly down the hallway leading to the restrooms, his footsteps slow and heavy. At the end of the corridor, he noticed the bathroom door slightly open. As he approached, he heard rustling fabric. When he looked through the narrow opening, he stopped breathing for a second. He saw Karen standing before the mirror, dress lifted, adjusting a silicone pregnancy belly that peeled slightly at the edges. She didn't notice him there. She kept working quickly, trying to make it look natural again. Tyrese froze. His hand tightened around his phone. One guest later told detectives, "He came back out looking like he'd been hit by something invisible." He said nothing. He asked no questions. He simply walked back into the party with a smile so calm, so controlled, that no one suspected anything was wrong. Witnesses later recalled, "He looked peaceful, too peaceful." And that was the moment the celebration ended, before anyone realized it. Karen returned minutes later, unaware that everything had already changed. Tyrese approached her slowly, keeping the smile, keeping the performance. He said in a soft voice that sounded loving, "Come with me. I've got something to show you in the other room." She nodded, believing the night was still hers. But the hallway where he stood moments earlier was now the path leading her to the truth she never wanted him to know. Behind the door of that decorated room filled with balloons and baby gifts, a secret exposed would turn into horror no one inside that venue would ever forget. The people closest to her that night, Aunt Dora and her two cousins, believed he was simply being thoughtful. Karen had been walking around for hours, smiling, hugging, and accepting congratulations. One cousin told detectives, "We thought he wanted to give her a break. She was supposed to be taking it easy." Another assumed he might have a personal gift waiting, something romantic to show how excited he was to become a father. Every assumption pointed to love, care, and joy. No one imagined danger was just one closed door away. Karen stepped into the side room decorated with soft blue and pink balloons, surrounded by piles of unopened baby presents. Police believe that what happened next was triggered by the moment Tyrese witnessed in the bathroom hallway, catching Karen removing the silicone pregnancy bump. The shock, humiliation, and growing suspicion that had been eating at him finally collided in that confined space. There were no surveillance cameras inside, and no witness saw the argument unfold. But detectives would later say the physical evidence revealed a terrifying sequence within minutes. Guests in the event hall heard the first sign of trouble, a single sharp scream that made heads turn. It sounded like someone got startled, one cousin recalled. Before anyone could react, another noise followed, a loud crash, like furniture slamming hard against the wall or hitting the floor. Then, nothing. The silence that replaced the scream was so sudden that it froze people in place. A few guests looked toward the hallway but hesitated, assuming Tyrese was helping Karen manage a slip or a dizzy spell brought on by pregnancy. It was a logical thought at a celebration built on the expectation of new life. Then, the door to the decorated room opened. Tyrese stepped out. His expression was described as emotionally blank, neither angered nor panicked. His shirt bore stains that did not match anything innocent. A cousin, trying to check on Karen, lightly touched his arm and asked, "Everything okay in there?" Tyrese did not answer the question. He simply said, "Give her a minute," and walked past without looking back. Those watching assumed Karen needed privacy, maybe embarrassed from a fall, maybe overwhelmed. There was still hope in the room, false hope, but hope nonetheless. Nearly 4 long minutes passed, enough time for the music to continue, for guests to resume short conversations, though with uneasy glances toward the hallway. Aunt Dora, feeling something wasn't right, turned to her nieces and said, "Go check on her. Now." When they opened the door, fear punched the room harder than any sound could. Karen lay on the floor, motionless, eyes partially open. The torn silicone belly lay beside her like a discarded prop, exposing a truth that had been held together by fear and love. Balloons designed to celebrate a life that didn't exist brushed against her arm. A gift labeled "To Mommy" sat soaked near a small pool of blood. A cousin screamed and the entire event hall fell into chaos. Guests abandoned plates and rushed in. Someone shouted, "Call 911 right now!" Another dropped to their knees, pressing a cloth to Karen's head, begging her to wake up. Aunt Dora, shaking and crying, repeated, "Baby, stay with me. Just stay with me." Paramedics arrived minutes later and quickly assessed the scene. One responded to a detective later saying, "The injuries were catastrophic. She didn't stand a chance." Karen Whitfield, 53 years old, a woman who overcame so much pain in life, was pronounced dead at the scene. As investigators documented evidence and forensic teams began their work, guests stood in shock outside the venue, wrapped in thermal blankets. They were questioned one by one, every detail of the night becoming part of a timeline police knew would matter. But one question remained unanswered. What exactly happened inside that room in those 8 minutes? All anyone knew for sure was that joy had vanished, and fear had taken its place faster than anyone could react. The next morning, on June 19th at 9:12 a.m., detectives called Nicole, the friend who first encouraged Karen to pursue real estate, the one who introduced her to a world where Karen rebuilt her life. Nicole's reaction was immediate disbelief. She asked officers over the phone, "What do you mean she's gone? I just talked to her about the baby shower yesterday." When police told her Karen died during the event and that the pregnancy was confirmed to be fabricated, Nicole sobbed and said, "No. She wouldn't lie unless she felt she had no other choice. She wanted love. She deserved love." That phone call marked the moment Nicole learned not only that Karen had died, but that her friend had been carrying a secret fearfully alone. Karen's body was transported for further forensic evaluation. The silicone pregnancy belly, ripped and still warm from her skin, was tagged as evidence. The room where she took her last breath was photographed from corner to corner. The celebration banner remained hanging above the tragic scene, "Baby Walker," each letter now a grim reminder of a life imagined, not real. Investigators stood in that room realizing they weren't just dealing with a homicide. They were dealing with a homicide rooted in deception, heartbreak, and a truth that arrived too late to save a woman who only wanted to be loved. The guests left the venue that night traumatized, and Aunt Dora collapsed multiple times, repeating one question that has echoed through every interview since. Why did this happen to my baby? But detectives were already fitting together the next major piece of the puzzle. The actions that took place before that door closed, the motive that extended beyond betrayal, and the one person whose behavior now demanded every ounce of their attention. Because if it took just minutes inside a private room to destroy a life, what could months of planning have done leading up to that moment? Patrol officers initially hoped for any indication Karen had suffered a sudden collapse or medical event, but paramedics were the first to share what detectives quickly confirmed: the blunt force trauma on her skull was not consistent with a fall. Multiple impact sites, consistent with repetitive strikes, left no room for doubt. A medical examiner conducting the first visual assessment quietly said, "Someone did this to her." Karen hadn't slipped. She hadn't fainted. Someone had attacked her with the intention to cause serious, fatal harm. Defensive wounds added another piece of proof that she fought for her life. There were bruises circling her wrists, as though someone gripped them tightly. There were fresh cut marks on her palms, the kind typically found when a victim tries to push away their attacker. Scrapes on her knees revealed she was likely forced downward before the final blow. Detective Rivera noted in the report, "Her injuries show a struggle. She was conscious and aware of the danger." It was the kind of detail that shifts a tragedy into a crime worth every resource available. As for the silicone pregnancy belly, it wasn't hidden. It wasn't tucked away. It was on the floor in plain sight. To officers, that single object explained why no baby kicks were ever mentioned, why Karen avoided intimacy, why suspicion might have built up quietly over time, and why her killer's reaction, fueled by betrayal and anger, may have erupted without warning. The truth wasn't simply revealed. It was ripped into the open. Evidence markers continued to fill the room. Clothing fibers collected, blood patterns mapped, shoe prints traced. Among all of it, one finding stood out: a distinctive imprint inside a smear of Karen's blood, the curved edge of a wristwatch face. Detectives compared the print to photographs of Tyrese at the event earlier that night. He wore a silver metal watch, thick along the edges. The imprint matched its shape. A forensic analyst later stated, "The transfer pattern places the suspect in direct physical contact at the time of injury." This was no mystery of who attacked her. It was a question of where that attacker went next. Investigators then moved quickly to secure guests for questioning, while the crime scene unit continued processing the area. Statements were taken one by one. Almost every witness told the exact same story. Tyrese went into that private room with Karen, and only he came out. A cousin confirmed. He said she needed a minute. Then he walked off. When detectives asked, "Did anyone see where he went after that?" the answer was the same across the board: no. And in a building full of people, that invisibility wasn't accidental. It was the first major sign he intentionally escaped. Officers stepped outside to locate Tyrese's vehicle. His black Honda Civic was missing from the parking lot. A review of the venue's surveillance footage captured only one critical moment: his car leaving the lot, minutes before anyone opened that door and screamed for help. There was no hesitation, no rush visible in the footage. He drove away as if he already knew no one would stop him. Police classified him as a person of interest immediately. Within the hour, that changed to the primary suspect in a homicide. Back inside, the investigation into motive began. Why would someone who celebrated a baby shower one moment commit murder the next? Why would he flee if he were innocent? And why would Karen, a strong woman who had fought so hard for stability, feel forced to build a lie so elaborate? Her phone, recovered near a stack of unopened baby gifts, was the next crucial step. Detectives scrolled through her recent messages, noting reminders of doctor appointments, inspirational quotes about motherhood, and conversations where she reassured Tyrese the pregnancy was healthy. Everything pointed to a woman terrified of losing the man she believed would finally give her a family. Now, With the crime scene fully processed and witness statements collected, police prepared the official case file that would shape the manhunt ahead. They had a victim who lived a life of resilience, a room filled with evidence of violence, and a suspect who walked silently out of the venue before the truth was even spoken aloud. The silicone belly proved deception. The blood proved force. The wristwatch print proved physical involvement. Every piece of evidence pointed to one conclusion: intent. They were now searching for a man who believed he had every reason to run. And while the guests went home haunted by what they saw, detectives faced a new, urgent question. Where was Tyrese Walker now? And how far was he willing to go to stay hidden? But once detectives began looking at the weeks leading up to the murder, the motive shifted from heartbreak to something far more calculated. It took only 48 hours for the financial piece to surface. Detectives gained access to Karen's personal files and discovered something that reframed the entire case: a life insurance policy in the amount of $750,000. The paperwork was dated April 10, 2024, just 2 months before the murder, and listed under sole beneficiary, Tyrese Walker. Karen's reliable signature was present on every page, initials marked beside clauses she likely didn't fully read. When investigators asked family if they knew about the policy, Aunt Dora responded, "She never said a word about that. Karen wasn't a reckless woman. She wouldn't do something that big unless she trusted who convinced her." Detectives requested her banking records next, and what they saw matched a disturbing pattern seen in exploitation-driven crimes. Expensive purchases tied to Tyrese's lifestyle, a new wardrobe, premium fitness equipment for his business, payments for online certifications, even a deposit toward a used sports car he'd bragged about wanting. Karen paid for nearly every upgrade in his life, and while some partners willingly invest in each other, detectives noticed Karen's spending increased dramatically only after she claimed to be pregnant. The timing wasn't coincidence, it was leverage. Then there was his private digital footprint. A search warrant allowed investigators to recover Tyrese's phone browsing history, fragments not deleted properly. Forensic techs compiled searches going back months, long before June 18th, long before he witnessed the truth in the hallway. Searches like, how to know if a pregnancy is fake, signs of silicone belly, do women lie about being pregnant for attention, life insurance payout after spouse dies, how soon after death can insurance be collected. These were not the searches of a man blindsided by betrayal. They were the searches of someone becoming suspicious and preparing for what might come next. Among those digital findings was something detectives said changed the entire tone of the investigation: a text message Tyrese typed but never sent. It was located in his drafts folder, time-stamped May 26, 2024. The message read, "If you ever lie to me, you will regret it. I promise you that." Detectives believe the lie referenced was Karen's pregnancy, meaning that for weeks before the murder, he was already simmering with awareness that something was off. He didn't seek the truth through communication. He sought to corner it. What investigators needed to understand next was whether Tyrese discovered the lie earlier and chose to play along, waiting until the perfect moment to strike. Because if he knew the pregnancy wasn't real weeks before June 18th, then the baby shower wasn't a celebration he believed in, it was his stage. Everything about that night could be viewed differently: his calm behavior, his prideful speeches, his steady movements, that hollow expression as he walked out of the hall without breaking into a run. Those aren't signs of shock. Those are signs of someone who knew what would happen. Detectives reached out to others to understand the version of Tyrese Karen didn't see. What they learned weren't random mood swings. They were insecurities tied to pride, tied to reputation, tied to legacy. Financial elevation wasn't just a desire for Tyrese, it was an obsession. Friends said he constantly compared himself to wealthy gym clients. He felt like life owed him something, one source said. He envied the stability he never had growing up and believed he deserved more than personal training wages could provide. So when Karen, a successful broker with decades of hard-earned wealth, entered his life. She represented more than a partner. She represented the lifestyle he craved, and the shortcut to acquire it. Detectives formed their theory. The pregnancy lie didn't ignite the crime. It interrupted his plan. If Karen delivered the baby he expected, his identity would transform overnight. Fatherhood, status, sympathy, future financial benefits. But a fake pregnancy threatened to strip that dream away and expose him as someone who had anchored his future to a lie. Experts analyzing the case said men like Tyrese fear humiliation above all else. And in his mind, Karen's deception wasn't just a betrayal. It was an attack on the future he believed he was owed. Investigators gathered every financial document, every search query, every interview transcript into the expanding case file. What they built was a narrative that left one unsettling truth staring back. Karen wasn't the one who created the danger. She only set it into motion. Tyrese built the trap. He just never expected the lie to expose his motive first. With his face and name officially declared as the primary suspect in a homicide, Atlanta police issued an alert across the state within hours. Officers checked known addresses, gyms he had worked at, even places friends said he might crash. But Tyrese Walker was gone before anyone could blink twice. His car crossed out of the city that same night. Detectives told the media he knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't panic. He planned his exit. By the end of the week, Tyrese was on a national fugitive list with law enforcement across the country receiving his photo and physical description. Then came the flood of tips, people calling in sightings from Atlanta parking lots to bus stations in Alabama, to gyms in Houston, and late-night rumors claiming he had slipped through to Mexico. Each call brought a rush of hope, but every lead fizzled out. Investigators pulled surveillance footage, showed photos to witnesses, and tracked credit card usage, but nothing tied back to him. It became clear that Tyrese either had help or he had prepared for a disappearance long before the baby shower. A detective said off-record, "Men who run right after a murder often make mistakes. He hasn't. That tells us something important." The question was, what did he prepare for, and when? Police turned to the only family member they could locate, his older brother, Patrick Walker. Patrick lived in a small care facility outside Savannah. Diagnosed with severe schizophrenia years earlier, he struggled to communicate timelines or understand the situation fully. When officers asked if Tyrese had contacted him, he reportedly responded, "He said he was getting what he deserved." Then, the phone cut. Investigators couldn't confirm whether it was a solid memory or a confused fragment. All they could note was that the one person who might know something was mentally unable to help. Meanwhile, Karen's family stepped forward publicly, pleading for justice. In a press conference outside the county police department, Aunt Dora, exhausted and grieving, begged the community, "If you know something, say something. We don't want revenge. We want the truth." Karen Cousins held up a poster with Karen's smiling face beside the number for the homicide tip line. People passing by stopped and stared, some in tears, shaken by how a woman who worked so hard for stability could lose everything she loved in one night. Online, her story spread, not just of the murder, but of a woman whose final act came from desperation, not deceit. Detectives continued working non-stop. They reviewed hospital security cameras around the dates Karen claimed appointments. They analyzed Tyrese's phone records to map every tower ping in the months prior. They ran facial recognition checks on transportation hubs and border checkpoints. One investigator wrote, "This suspect vanished with intention. This did not start the night she died." Many began to believe the pregnancy discovery didn't set him off. It exposed his motive before he could finalize it. Karen's lie may have come from fear, but his motive, detectives suggested, came from control and greed. Years may pass in a case like this, but grief does not wait. Karen's funeral gathered everyone who loved her, co-workers who admired her drive, neighbors who remembered the orphaned girl trying to fit into a family that wasn't hers, friends who watched her rebuild herself again and again. A framed photo sat near the casket, Karen smiling with a hope she fought to protect. As her aunt said through tears, she wanted a family, That's not a crime. And with every passing month of no arrest, that pain only grows. Justice feels farther away. Fear that he might be living freely somewhere only increases. So one question refuses to rest. Did Karen invent a baby to keep love alive? Or to protect herself from a man she feared might leave her broken all over again? Sometimes, lies are not about manipulation. Sometimes, they're a shield held by someone who has run out of ways to survive. Detectives still urge the public to come forward. And if you fear someone you love may be living in silence, please reach out before silence becomes a headline. Karen's truth deserves to be heard. Her story deserves justice, and her family deserves answers. Don't let her name fade without accountability. Don't let her final moments be the last chapter. Join us as we continue to push this case forward. If you felt connected to Karen's story, if you believe she deserves justice, please like this video so more people see it. Share this video with others because someone, somewhere, might hold the missing clue. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you stay with us through every update, every breakthrough, and every case like this that still needs a voice. Comment below with "Justice for Karen" to show support for her family. Our goal is not entertainment, it's impact. Your engagement can help keep this case alive and help protect someone watching right now who hasn't yet found the courage to ask for help. Together, we can be the difference between a cold case and a case finally closed.